I like to think of if there is a why, it's going to be to create meaningful work that has resonance, that's funny, that goes down in the canon as being notable.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest journey, finding out what makes them who they are, talking about all the ups, all the downs, and all the thoughts and feelings in between, uncovering the parts of their story that, well, we otherwise wouldn't get to hear. I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I'm a creative of many kinds, a maker of many, many things. And one of those things I often do now is lots of involvement in the comedy scene here in Columbus, Ohio. So I was excited to chat with my guest this week, Simon Fraser, a great comedian from right here in what he would call the greatest city, the comedy capital of the world, if you will, here in Columbus. Simon is a great comedian. And we have just a very laid back and fun conversation as we dig into his story of how he got involved in the world of stand-up, traveling to every town named London in the United States. Yes, for real, he did that. Working with Don't Tell Comedy, the very cool secret pop-up comedy shows that happen all over the U.S. And of course, we dig into why he loves high noons so much as well. So all that and, of course, a lot more. I mean, folks, you see the runtime in this episode. Of course, there's a lot more. There's always more. And I'm going to tell you about some amazing partners that I have here on the show, the wonderful sponsors who help me keep the mics on around here. And then right after that, we're going to dig into every bit of more of that conversation that I have with Simon. So we'll dive in right after these words from our sponsors. And by that, I mean me telling you about those sponsors. So first up, this episode is sponsored by the Franklinton Market. What is the Franklinton Market? Well, of course, it's located here in Columbus in the Franklinton Arts District. And when I had a studio over in that area originally, there was one thing that was heavily missing, and that was a convenience store. And yes, I know that sounds strange, but honestly, the area was a total food desert. That was until the Franklinton Market came in and saved the day, and yes, they brought snacks. Located right in the heart of Franklinton, right there on Rich Street, which also exists as a part of River and Rich, some other lovely partners and sponsors of ours. I'll get to them in a minute. But they offer a unique shopping experience that's tailored to meet the needs of busy urban dwellers. As I said, they conveniently feature a variety of snacks, beverages, health and beauty items, last-minute grocery items, and even those awesome Go Meals, which are a local and freshly prepared line of sandwiches, breakfast, lunch, and dinner take-and-go meals prepared by Chef Micah. So whether you're a regular visitor to the vibrant arts district there, or maybe just passing through and you need somewhere to stop in at, well, be sure to stop by the store and discover this hidden gem of the Franklinton Market. They are open daily, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, noon to 6, and you can follow them online for any further information that you want to know by finding them at Franklinton MKT. If you're looking for a place to live and you want to live in the middle of the art-filled lifestyle over in Franklinton, then What You Don't Hear is your hookup, because we are sponsored by our friends over at River and Rich. Now, River and Rich brings together quality apartments, desirable amenities, and a vibrant artistic community. Located right in Franklinton, River and Rich offers 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and townhouse-style apartments with open floor plans, oversized windows, and modern finishes. The amenities, those include a huge 24/7 gym, a heated pool, a fully stocked coffee bar, and a secure package delivery room. Pretty much everything you need for a cool place to live. And it doesn't just stop at the building. River and Rich embraces and connects with the art-filled Franklinton community. They've got local art and murals featured all throughout the community itself. River and Rich is both a place to go home to and is also becoming a living piece of art in its own. So if that environment sounds like something that you want to live in, well, of course you can. Go check it out. They offer both guided and self-guided tours, so you can go check out an apartment anytime. Visit their website at riverandrichcolumbus.com for more information. Also, check this out. Because you listen to this podcast, I might be able to help you get a freaking apartment, because now new applicants can receive up to half off their security deposit if you use the code WYDH pod. So again, for more information, please contact River and Rich. Certain restrictions might apply. Hop over to riverandrichcolumbus.com to get things moving and go join the colorful life over at River and Rich. And this episode is also sponsored by Promo West Productions. Now, over the last 2 years, I've gotten to tell you, well, about a lot of many cool concerts that happen here in Columbus. And this episode, well, it's happening again because I've got some more cool shows to tell you about. So if you live in or around the Columbus, Ohio area and you're interested in catching a live show, getting that live music experience, well, then you may want to check out one of these upcoming concerts that are coming your way via Promo West. They've got Hot Water Music coming to Newport Music Hall on Saturday, May 4th. Nothing More plays at Kemba Live on Saturday, May 11th. Periphery is at Newport Music Hall on May 14th. And then Brit Floyd comes to Kemba Live on May 16th. If you want to hear those again, just hit the rewind 15 seconds button and you'll hear them all again. But if you do want to grab tickets to any of those, well, you can just jump to AXS.com, or as always, for more information on those or any other upcoming concerts. If you want to know who's coming to town and when here in Columbus, you can find all that information that you need over at promowestlive.com. And I thank them so much for being a lovely supporter and sponsor of not only this episode, but this podcast in general for the last handful of years. That is real freaking cool. So big thanks to every sponsor for this episode, and a big thanks to you, my dear listener, for checking out this episode. So let's get to what you came here for. Let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Simon Fraser in this episode 108 of What You Don't Hear. Let's make it happen. Simon, welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, man, especially after your last, at the point of us recording this, last couple of days, a little chaotic for travel for you. So I've already told you about 100 times, but I appreciate you making the time.
I wouldn't have missed it.
I love it. That's the attitude we need for this conversation.
I called up American Airlines.
I love it. You said, listen.
I said, I got a pod.
I have a podcast to be on. You need to get me home right now.
And they listened.
Well, dude, I, in general, appreciate you being down to be on the podcast. I think I came across you like a handful of months ago. And I don't know how many times you've probably heard this story at this point, maybe, but my first introduction to you was the whole, the clip about Columbus from your stand-up set, right? Of just like running through and all that sort of stuff. And then, yeah, since then I've just seen you killing it in so many different ways, man. So I'm excited to get to know you and kind of uncover honestly where this all came from. So my first kind of thing is like, how long have you been doing stand-up comedy?
7 years now.
Okay.
I started in college, my freshman summer of college, and just kind of went from that. So started there, but then college, it's a lot of just performing for your friends.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really legit. But I
Right.
only really started performing when I moved out to Ohio in the spring of 2021.
Okay.
And started hitting mics and shows every single night.
And where'd you go to college at?
I went to Yale for college in
Okay.
Connecticut, and then moved out to Ohio.
Right. Okay. So I guess take me back even further. Like, did you grow up in that area, or where?
No.
Like, where's young Simon from?
I grew up in London.
Okay.
And I grew up in London, and then went to college in Connecticut, and that's kind of my story. I applied, and I got in, and I didn't get in anywhere else, so it was a pretty easy decision to make.
Interesting.
And I went there.
Was the goal at that point in time to like, hey, I want to move out of London, I want to go like to America and all that sort of stuff, or was it just like, hey, they were the ones that said yes, so I went?
It could have been the former of those answers if I had gotten in anywhere else, but yeah, it ended up being the latter, where it was the only place I got in. I applied to Oxford as well in England, but I didn't get in, so it was actually a really easy decision to make.
And what were you going to school for?
I don't know. I applied to Oxford for history. For Yale, it's liberal arts, so you don't need to declare a major. So I ended up majoring in history, but I had no idea what I wanted to do for the first 2 years. It was totally I was just there to hang out.
Yeah. Okay. So was it one of those vibes where it was like, was it a, hey, this is what you're supposed to do after you graduate high school? Like, you're just supposed to go to college. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Oh, it was definitely, you were definitely going to go to college, but it wasn't clear whether it was going to be the UK or the US.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess even like on that note of, hey, I'm graduating high school, it's time to go to college. This is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what else to do. I don't know where I'm going to go. What is growing up like in general? Was it just like kind of the run of the mill sort of thing, or even from a comedic standpoint? Like, is Little Simon like often funny? Did you find comedy earlier? Like, walk me through and take me back.
Nothing too crazy in my childhood, to be honest. Even though I thought it was the toughest childhood alive. Kind of, when you're sheltered, you don't have much exposure to other viewpoints. So I thought I was a tough kid. You know, I'd watch those movies and be like, that's me.
Right,
you
right,
know?
Okay.
I watched, Coach Carter, of that guy, of Samuel L. Jackson teaching all those kids how to be a man while playing basketball.
Right.
I was like, that's me.
Okay.
So I thought that was my life. And I grew up in London. I went to boarding school from 13 to 18, and there was, beyond that, nothing too remarkable.
Yeah.
Just a childhood. I was pretty funny. I got access to the TV and the computer when I was pretty young, so that definitely helped. I just grew up watching a lot of shows like just all the classic comedies that were on at the time. I'm not quite sure what they were. The only one I really remember watching when I was a kid was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Okay.
But I was like, that's a great show.
Yeah.
I was like, that's hilarious.
Was there anything even early on that ever set it into you where you were like, all right, I'm kind of like, I like being funny. I like to do that. That would be cool to do one day. Or was it just pure entertainment value of like, I just happened to watch them? Like,
I think it was a mix of like not fitting in necessarily too well. And then obviously it's, a tale as old as time, but realizing if you were funny, people would like you. And so it was definitely a lot of that. I definitely had a creative inkling. I made YouTube videos when I was 10 or 11, trying to make something funny. None of it was fun. I mean, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny in the time of the making.
Right.
But yeah, it was just like, I was genuinely funny. I read a lot. I really like to write. English was my favorite subject, and I wrote a lot of funny stories. Not necessarily like David Sedaris type, but just what I thought was funny when I was 11 or 12. And yeah, and then it just kind of ended up just being funny was something I could do. Not really well. I was never really funny. It was a lot of puns. I was really into puns, and so I was like, that's funny. And no one finds puns funny.
Right.
No one finds puns funny. I don't even find puns funny. But I.
Well, now we know.
Yeah, but I can still make them.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
You got that in your back pocket in case you ever need to break them out. Like, exactly. We're good.
But yes, no, I was not. I thought I was funny. I was not funny for a long time.
Yeah. So there was never that moment that's even set in kind of early on where you were like, I can make something of this. It was like, oh, I'll try to do YouTube videos. Like, I think I can do it. But was there ever really that? I guess maybe that plan. At all, of like
no plan,
seeing proof
plan.
Of like I can probably figure that out. Like,
I had no plan of doing comedy. I had no plan of being a comedian. I always wanted to be a comedian, but I had no plan. It's the same way I would want to be a soccer player or a basketball player. It's like I wanted to be it. But
yeah, it's a thing you see people doing, and you're like, oh, that seems cool. I would like to do that, but I see no path in how to do that. So yeah, whatever. It's just a thing. I'll keep watching them do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so like going back into like coming to the U.S. for college, like walk me through that process. Like, was it just a thing where you were like, I'm down, here we go? Was there any part of you that was like, whoa? Okay, this is a major change. Like,
no. It was all the same. Going to college in the U.S., at least at a place like Yale, is very similar. It was very similar to my boarding school, and even the buildings looked the same. There was little transition. It's not that hard to transition from the UK to the US. You come from like Uzbekistan, and you go to the US. Then it's tricky. But like the UK to the US, I wasn't even driving at the time. It wasn't, I wasn't even like having to drive on the other side.
Yeah.
It was the same. The only thing that would get me would be grammar and like sensitivity to certain issues, which we didn't have in
Right.
the UK.
Right.
And or at least which we didn't have in our boarding school. But those were the only things. Other than that, totally normal transition. So unremarkable, I promise you.
And there was no part of you, even young you, that was like, I'm over here with like no family or friends or anything. I'm just in a whole different like.
No, it's fine. I mean, you go to boarding school, right? So you're away, and it doesn't really matter if you're 30 minutes away or 5 hours away.
Wild, yeah.
And I mean, I had a lot of friends. Actually, I didn't really know that many people, but I knew certain people as well who were in my class. We had met at like networking events or meet-up events before the year started. So it wasn't completely going in blind. It was all pretty normal.
Yeah.
I really wish I had more of it was so tough story.
I mean, hey, we can make one up. I'll edit around it. So whatever you want to add. Just like it was the hardest thing in the world. No, but that is fascinating to me. Because from an outsider's perspective, I hear something, moving literally, across the pond, that whole sort of thing. Like, that sounds like a gigantic world change to me. And I'm like, wow, okay. Like, that's actually fascinating that it was just like yeah, man, it was just more people in a different place.
Yeah,
and
it would be the same
cool.
if you moved to the UK. I think some people would I'm sure some people would be like, whoa, cool accent. And a lot of other people would be like, we already have a few American friends. So
right.
Your accent doesn't really shock us. You're just another person.
Yeah.
It's kind of just how it felt.
And now, apologies if you said this earlier, but did you graduate college and all that sort of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm assuming like handful of years of college, super straightforward, normal, just like, yep, I'm aiming to graduate, and then we're going to look for a job after college.
Yeah, that was pretty much just 4 years. Just 4 years of college. I went there 2016 and then graduated 2020, so the pandemic kind of affected that.
Gotcha.
Which led to my coming to Columbus. But that was pretty much it.
Okay, so what does bring you to Columbus then?
I was just driving through in September of 2020. I was doing a project. I was going to every place in America named London because I had lost my passport earlier in the year, and so I couldn't go back to London, England for COVID. So I was like, next best thing, go to every place named London in America. And, there's London, Ohio, which is like 30 miles away from here. It's right by Grove City. And I stopped by in Columbus for a night. My buddy who was on the football team in college was like, come stay with me. Went to stay with him. Bumped into 3 guys who I was in the same fraternity as in college, just on the street randomly. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? They're like, we moved for quarantine. I was like, great. So we got a drink at a pub in the short north, and then I left my number for the bartender because I was like, I'll never be here again. Why not? And she texted back, and I was like, this is a hell of a town. I got friends, I got a girl, I got a place to stay, and that was September 2020. So it's been like 3 and a bit years now.
And so that literally was the decision maker where you were like, hey, things seem pretty cool here.
Yeah.
I'll come back and I'm just going to stay. Like,
I was like, that's great. This is so awesome. And then I started putting on some comedy shows in my buddy's apartment at the time. And just like inviting like 10 to 15 people. And everyone afterwards was like, we wish we had a comedy club like this in downtown or in the short north. And I was like, yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. And so then I was like, actually, I've got nothing going on because I don't have a job. So why not move to Columbus and try and start a comedy club in the downtown area? And for a year or so, I was like searching for venues, trying to find the right spot. Turns out so expensive to open up a comedy club, especially if there's no kitchen already. Because a comedy club is just a restaurant with entertainment. It is not a place which focuses on comedy. So... and then I just ended up putting on a bunch of shows in my apartment in random spots around town, like Brothers Drake and Junior's opposite the Bottle Shop on King. And yeah, then in my apartment, I just give out free high noon to whoever wanted to come. And that was that. And then eventually I got connected with the Don't Tell Comedy producer out in Boston who connected me to the national producer. She was like, you should just do this in Columbus. It's so much easier. And that's what I did. And then Don't Tell I started Don't Tell in February of 2022. And it's been almost 2 years now. And
Mm-hmm.
like, you've hosted. It's rocking.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love. I love the idea of Don't Tell, and I love that we've gotten to have a few of them here. And so there's a bunch of things I want to dive into over that timeline. One of the things before we even dive into the comedy, I want to go back to like this whole I need to visit everywhere named London in the U.S. How many places did you end up going?
There are 15.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
London, Pennsylvania was my first stop. I just was going off whether when you typed into Google Maps, London state, did it show up?
Yeah.
And so London, Pennsylvania did show up, but I turned up and it was just the side of a highway. And just one, just one guy selling Trump merch on the side of a highway in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, great, that's it. I assumed that probably was like some kind of weird hamlet or something nearby, or maybe underneath the highway or something like that. But I didn't know enough at the time, so I just went there. That was London, Pennsylvania. Then London, Ohio was next. So I set out to London, Ohio. It's there. It's a place.
Right.
London, West Virginia. London, Kentucky. London, Kentucky is the biggest of the Londons in the United States. 5,000 people. Very near the home of KFC in Corbin, as well as being very close to Cumberland Falls, which is a beautiful, beautiful waterfall in the Daniel Boone State Park. Then there's London, Michigan, which is right next to Milan, Michigan, but they pronounce it Milan, Michigan, which is fun.
Interesting.
There's London, Minnesota, which is pretty close to Rochester, Minnesota, right near the Spam Museum. London, Wisconsin has a pretty good bar on the High Street, and the High Street was the county line. 2 county lines in Wisconsin separate the High Street. So on one side, it's like liberal laws. This was during COVID, of course. So on one side, there's very liberal laws, and on the other side, very conservative laws. So you could see it was like mask required, mask mandatory, not allowed.
Right.
So it's great. And
that's wild.
London, Oregon was the Native Americans convinced the settlers who came there that the spring contained a magical healing power. So it became a huge tourist attraction in the 1900s, 1910s, until some scientists came and they studied the spring, and the secret ingredient was arsenic. So they shut down the spring, and it's been a ghost town ever since. London, Missouri, renamed to Tokyo, Missouri, very recently. Just like 5 people living there, 1 lady who makes quilts. London, Texas was named after London, West Virginia, because it wanted to achieve the same national acclaim. Mission accomplished.
What?
London, California was the only non-white California. Sorry, was the only non-white London. Every other London was small, white, and old. London, California was much more Hispanic. Had a lot of, it was a lot of Mexicans picking oranges is what the industry is in London, California. It's quite near Fresno, which is the middle in between San Francisco and LA, but not on the coast. And it was great, I really got an appreciation of small town living, people who live a different life from the one I grew up with, and the one I continue to live. But I saw all of them were really kind. All of them had a lot of love in their heart and just wanted to get by. And, I think you just see a lot on the news is peddled about people from small towns. London, Alabama, London, Tennessee was called Del Rio, Tennessee, actually. So the residents didn't even know it was called London.
Interesting.
London, Alabama was like this trailer park, and London, Arkansas had this great barbecue restaurant called something like Pigs, Fat Pigs or something like that, and it was delicious. So yeah, you just kind of, everyone cares about the community and everyone cares about the church is kind of all these small towns, which is probably not new to anyone who's from there, but to me it was just interesting.
Dude, that is actually one. I just learned so much in a little bit of time about all these. I didn't even know there was that many different Londons.
That's not including the new Londons, which I refused to visit because that would have been more.
The new Londons?
Yeah. So there's New London, Connecticut. There's more New Londons than there are Londons.
Really?
You know, like New York. You know, there's some Yorks. There's York, Pennsylvania, but then there's New York, and then there's...
I guess I didn't really ever think about the fact that people are naming places New something anymore.
Yeah.
It just kind of seems like it was named years and years ago, and it's just, oh yeah, that's new, whatever. I guess I don't take into consideration how often anyone is actually naming a new town
It's true.
or anything.
To be fair, I think a lot of these news were a long time ago.
Right,
But,
yeah.
But at the time, they were new.
It's also fascinating to me that, one, that you did this. So I feel like that's a dope thing to have done, is just to go around and travel and, yes, get a small town experience, but also just to, like, make that something you did. Like, that's a pretty cool thing.
It was cool for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely really got a lot out of it.
What was the time frame of you hitting all those places?
It took so long.
Yeah, okay.
The first one was September of 2020, and I finished in March of 21.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, and I wasn't, like, trying to hit all of them every day. I was enjoying my time around them and doing a trip around the country, but I was basing it on those places.
Yeah. It's also wild to me the amount of stuff that you remembered about each of these places.
Well, you know, there's only all of them are quite specific.
Right.
There's only so much to see in these places, but it's still really nice.
Yeah.
I do feel really bad though. London, Kentucky, the tourism officer Kelly was really kind to me. She took me all around, and then she said, "Promise me you won't promise me you won't do what everyone does, and make like jokes about small town instead of like showing what we're really about." And I was like, of course not. And then I posted this one joke which got clipped up, but it took out the part where I was like, I'm joking.
Oh, of course.
I actually I meant it really nicely.
Yeah.
And then somehow got to her on Facebook, and she was upset. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Did you guys end up chatting about, like, did she actually reach out, or was it just a thing where she was like, okay.
No, she reached out like in a way where I was like, oh, I let you down. And I was like, I didn't really, because if you watch the full clip, it's nice.
Right, yeah.
But just the way it's edited, it doesn't look great.
There's always context to
so
something.
I'm sorry, Kelly.
That's what now. Yes, now we know. Now we have cleared the air. We know. But that is one in general. Again, a very dope thing. And when you mentioned that earlier, I was like, okay, I want to dive back into that for a second. Like, that might not be the most like crazy prominent part of the story here, but that is very interesting to hear. Of like, hey, I found all the Londons in the U.S. Went and checked them all out. Now, what were you? I know this is a very specific question, but I'm curious of like, what were you doing during that time? Like, was it like working remotely and all this sort of stuff and you were just like traveling around, like having the space and time to do that?
No, I was just like, I was unemployed.
Okay.
It was just literally I was doing stand-up. I was traveling with 50 chairs in my car, and I was kind of performing wherever anyone would let me perform. So I'd text buddies in random cities and be like, hey, do you want to invite 20 people over to your place? I'll do a comedy show for an hour. And they were like, yeah, sure. And
dude.
So I was doing that. But other than that, no, just running on empty.
That is okay. So that in itself is wild to me, that you're traveling around. So you're doing these pop-up stand-up events.
Yeah.
In just like each place you were going. Okay. So I guess even before we continued on that road, I still want to rewind a little bit more. And let's uncut, like, when do you actually start to even plant the seeds and make the attempts of, all right, I've been the funny guy, I like doing this, I can go tell jokes in front of some friends at some apartments, but hey, what if I put a little bit more into this to even get to the point of having chairs that you're traveling with, and then saying, hey, let me do a pop-up event, let me do a pop-up show at your place.
Yeah.
Like, there's some gap in there. So like, how do you even begin? What's the decision like of, let's give this stand-up thing a shot?
I was just, I did my first open mic my freshman summer. I was kind of brought to it unintentionally by my colleague who I was working with at the time. And she was a stand-up. So I thought I was just going to watch her perform. And then she was like, all right, so you're good to go up as well? And I said yes, just out of being like, yeah, of course, I agreed to that. And then I panicked. But then I went up, and I did terribly, but I liked it. And so I was kind of like doing it a little bit here, and like every couple of months here and there for a year. And then I was I also have a little bit of a cough. I hope that's okay.
Oh, no, you're good.
I might lose my breath.
Also, if you need any more water, snag one out of the fridge whenever you need it.
That's perfect. I was interning my sophomore summer. I was a project manager at a drone company in rural Sri Lanka, and I was working on this tea plantation. And I didn't really know what to do. Like I said earlier, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was going to study or anything like that. And I had just been working a lot of odd jobs here and there during the summers. And it had led me to this tea plantation in Sri Lanka. I was like, I really don't want to be doing this. I had just had a moment of realization, like a lizard hopped into my bed. And I was like, I don't want to be doing random jobs. I just want to be doing stand-up and journalism at the time. And so I quit the job and went and toured in buses, going to open mics in random cities across America, just trying to get as many shots as possible. And so that was that. That was how that was kind of like the moment when I was like, I'm going to go after this. And then junior and senior years in college, I was doing shows in my basement of my housing. And then afterwards, like my 21st birthday, I asked my dad for 50 chairs. That was my present. I was like, I just want, if you get the chairs, I'll put them in the car and drive around and do it. But that's what I'd like. And so that was kind of the moment. I was just kind of like a realization that I didn't want to be doing anything corporate or silly like that.
Yeah. Okay. So something I'd love to dive into is, and maybe you haven't uncovered it and you're like, dude, I don't know, I just wanted to do it. But like, it is fascinating to me that you made the decision, okay, cool, I want to start the stand-up thing. Again, to even take the step into jumping on buses and just going and looking for open mics in different cities and state, whatever it is, like, I don't feel like that's a thing that a lot of people would do. Like, do you feel like it, like, in yourself, is that like, was there a confidence there of like, I know I can do it and this is the only way that I can do it is by going and trying? Or was it just sort of a blind, like, if I don't just kind of jump off the cliff and try, I'm never going to find out? Like, because I feel like that is a very specific decision to be able to commit to an idea that well. And I don't think a lot of people tend to do that. Like, it's easier to sit and say, oh man, I really want to do this thing. I don't like my job or corporate life or whatever, and I have this other endeavor, this other career idea in mind. I'd love to go do it. And it's the classic phrase of like, if everything was easy, everyone would do it, right? Mm-hmm. But that is like such a very specific thing to be able to commit yourself to doing, to hopping on a bus, going to open mics, asking for chairs so you can put on your own events. Like, I'm curious if you've thought about or uncovered, like, what do you feel like that is in you? Is it confidence? Is it just the ability just to try things? Like,
I think it was just like that. I knew a lot of it was blind, but I knew that the way to get better was to I heard one comic say the way to get better, you just have to get on the road, and I wasn't, and going on open mics on buses isn't necessarily the road, in terms of what the road actually means. Mm-hmm. But it was, at the time, I thought that's what it meant. So I just kind of just followed that word of advice and did it. And I went to random places. My first show was in Birmingham, Alabama, at the Hoover Stardome, where every comedy legend got their start, from Sinbad to Steve Harvey is their tagline. So that's all the comedians right there. And I did there and did some random competition in their side room. Then went on to some show in New Orleans, did some burlesque show in New Orleans. And then went from New Orleans to Austin, did some terrible show in Austin, did some terrible show in Denver, and then ended up in LA, where I was there for like 2 weeks, seeing my girlfriend at the time as well. And I would go to shows and it was horrible. You kind of wait for 5 hours for your name to be pulled, and then it doesn't get pulled, and there's 3 comics left, and they're like, all right, we're going to call 2 more names, and I would be the last name, so I wouldn't even get pulled. So it was all so depressing, but it was just part of the grind. And I think it's just, a lot of me as well saw it as, all those bus rides, all that traveling, is all part of the grind that's necessary for the gig.
Was there any, and maybe it happened quick enough to where it didn't hit this point, but during that time frame, was there a part of that quote unquote grind that ever did hit you where you were like, dude, do I actually want to do this that bad? Or was it just like, all right, next step, here we go?
No, I was so motivated to.
Yeah.
A lot of it was driven by revenge. In freshman and sophomore year, I tried out for a couple improv comedy groups on campus and some sketch comedy groups on campus, as well as a bunch of other groups non-comedy affiliated, and I hadn't gotten into any. And so actually a lot of my motivation early on was a desire to prove them wrong and to be funnier and more successful than any of them would ever be, which was a bit psychopathic, but it was what drove me early on. And so all those bus rides, all those drives in the car, and everything like that, it was all fine because it was all part of the journey.
Yeah. Was there? If I were to ask you, what do you feel like the most valuable lesson of that time frame was? What comes to mind?
Just to I think just embracing delusion is, in my head, I wasn't delusional. I thought I was really good, and I wasn't. Everyone thinks they're really good at the time, and it's just important to recognize that the comic or the person you will be in a few years from now is going to be a lot better than the person you were, earlier in your life. And I thought, if I had known that at the time, if I'd known how bad I was, I wouldn't have kept going. But I learned that sometimes you just have to be delusional. You have to stick with it, and even when everyone else is like, you're being stupid. Like, everyone was like, Simon, you're not good. But I just wanted to keep on trying and get better, and I knew I could do it, or at least I thought I could do it. So I just kept on pushing and embraced that delusion and kept on going.
I love that thought process. And something, so you said, like, people were telling you, like, dude, this isn't, you're not good. You're like bombing. Stop. Like,
they were a bit kinder. They were a bit kinder about it, but I think a lot of even my parents and my friends were like, oh, this is a nice hobby. It's a nice hobby that you have, but this isn't something that you're gonna do professionally.
Yeah, and but there still was that bit of a vengeance seed planted early on of like, all right, at one point in time, I had some people tell me that I couldn't do this, and so anybody else that tells me no from here on out, we're gonna move past, and we're just gonna keep it as motivation.
Yeah, it was just that it was motivation. I also just loved how is the wrong word, but I enjoyed how democratic it was as a job, as opposed to lots of other jobs, from where any other jobs you can succeed through connections, or you can succeed through money or something like that. Stand-up was one of those like purely meritocratic things where all that mattered was how funny you were on stage. Yeah. And there's a few caveats to that, like money and connections do buy you more stage time. They do allow you to travel more, and so it's not a perfect meritocracy, but at the end of the day, those things aren't the most important things. What really matters is just, are you funny on stage, and that can't be bought or connected with. So I do, and so that was another reason I was drawn to stand up, was I had just spent so much time with getting connections through random schoolmates or through family friends and stuff, and I just wanted to prove myself.
Yeah, well, I think there's something super valuable of, and again, I know I said this earlier, but I kind of reemphasize it, is like the fact that you kept taking these chances and taking these shots of, whether it is hopping on a bus to hit a city to do a thing and just stay motivated and try the thing, or making those connections of, hey, friend who has a dorm, who has a house, who has a whatever, can I come set up a show now that I've got all these chairs and all that sort of stuff? Like, those are things that like I love doing 100 different things in my life. Like I have 100 different creative endeavors. I don't know how many of them I would even put that much effort into, like, oh yeah, I'm going to have these shares. I'm going to go do pop-up events for this thing. I'm going to ask this person if I can go do an event. Like, so I will double down on saying that, like, I feel like you did find that value of what the community and the connections were, like that you were able to make yourself, rather than what I feel like maybe a lot of us tend to do in a career endeavor is you kind of wait for someone to open the door for you to then give you the connection of, all right, cool, you can come, you want to come try this thing now? And here you go, here's that offer you've been waiting for. Where you're somewhat literally going up to, doors and knocking on them, say, hey, can I do a stand-up set in here? And I feel like that, whether you were like killing it in a set or not, I almost feel like in an underlying way, the through line is technically all the connections that you were making of just, oh, that's Simon, he did a stand-up set in our house a couple weeks ago, blah, blah, blah. I almost feel like your activeness of creating your own community probably superseded the idea of whether you were the most hilarious person at that event or not. Like, does that make sense? Or
yeah, I think that's probably right. There was a lot of just working connections and everything here and there. It was, I think that's probably correct.
Yeah. And again, I point all that out because it is, it's interesting to me because, again, it's like I work in the creative world, in the entertainment world, and a lot of the times I hate hitting somebody up for something.
Yeah.
I hate to ever make it feel like I'm asking for a favor, even if I know they're going to be down, or I hate a classic cold email or something like that, where I'm like, oh God, like I hate the idea of feeling like I want something, even if I do, like I don't know how to navigate this. And so hearing stories like that it's just like putting yourself out there constantly, that is very fascinating to me. And something I would love to know is like, at what moment, and if we're jumping ahead, you can be like, oh dude, that was like 5 years later. But at what moment do you feel like there was a transition made where it stopped being, I'm getting up and I'm doing these sets and I'm being told that like, hey, you got some work to do. Like, what was the moment for you where you felt like it started to actually like work and maybe you felt a different type of confidence as a comedian?
I think there are a few different moments. There are probably a few snap moments. But the big one probably was in the fall of 2021. Actually the winter, in December of 2021, Jason Banks, who's local to Columbus, but a nationally touring comedian. We saw each other at a open mic that we both went to, and he was like, listen, if you're ever in the same city that I'm performing in, you can host for me. And I was like, oh shit, that's a huge opportunity. And so I was like, well, I checked out his tour schedule. I'm like, I'm coincidentally going to be in Raleigh in a week, and I'm going to be in Syracuse, and I'll be here, and I'm going to go out of my way to get to every single city that you have, because that's an unbelievable and unique opportunity. And so for the whole of 2022, I was hosting for Jason and going to all these random cities, and it was fun. I didn't have, some places he'd be able to get me a hotel, but a few places I'd have to like find my own place. And I never really liked just like splashing out on a hotel or anything like that. So I was like, made it a challenge to try and find somewhere to stay, which led to some interesting stories here and there. But it was definitely just through that, less so an snap moment, but just progressing and actually being on the road and having the experience of performing in front of real crowds instead of either my crowds, apartment shows, or random people, or random shows in Columbus and elsewhere. That was really what helped me become more and more professional as a comedian and get used to it all. Yeah.
How long was that transition period of, hey, I'm still doing, I'm throwing my pop-up shows, I'm doing some apartment shows. Like, was that a handful of years that happened before you then started, maybe getting booked on more of those like actual quote unquote shows? Or
the following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
Hey, what's up everybody? It's Ross. Yes, the Ross from this very show that you're listening to right now. But this is an ad version of me because I'm interrupting this program to tell you all about something else that I do that I want you to know about. And that is my other podcast called Whose Life Is It Anyway? It's half an improv comedy podcast, half a game show, and well, full nonsense. So I want you to pretend like the life story that you're hearing right now in this episode of What You Don't Hear. Imagine if it was being completely made up as we went and was filled with, well, some pretty outrageous details.
You started losing it. I'm like,
That's a boner, pal.
I buzz it when you lose, right?
So I want your guys' show to take place within the universe of Harry Potter. This is a podcast that takes place inside the Marvel universe. And I knew I was going to meet my fate. But one day, after all the children I've killed, I had no choice. Change.
She sings, "What you gonna do with all that junk? All that junk inside that trunk?"
Well, that is Whose Life Is It Anyway? Where in each episode, myself and two different guests sit down to make up a fake podcast interview with one of us in charge of the story using different improv games and guidelines to move the interview along. Oh, and this is an improv show where the points do matter. So if you're looking for something maybe a little less serious and way more funny and even crude at times, well, I've got the show for you. You can find it on social by following @Who'sLifePod, or of course, you can listen to it or watch it on whatever platform you're currently checking this show out on right now. But for now, let's get back to the show.
yeah, it was all kind of at the same time. I was doing I was just doing all these random shows across the country, but it was like kind of 2020, all of 2020. Or the second half of 2020, I was just doing apartment shows just in random places across the country. 2021, I started doing a few shows here and there in Columbus, while also I would drive to New York and do apartment shows there, as well as even I was out in LA and doing spots all over. And then at the same time trying to get some shows going in Columbus. Then 2022, Jason asked me to go on the road, so I'm on the road with him a bunch. I'm still doing apartment shows, and I'm also starting to run the Don't Tell shows in Columbus. So it all kind of happens kind of together, but it goes apartment shows into Jason shows into Don't Tell shows.
And was it also in there, like you mentioned earlier, looking to open a comedy venue here in Columbus?
That was always from the start.
Yeah.
That was the aim.
So tell me about that, because I feel like that's got to be a process of, I mean, trying to open a physical location for anything is probably a process. And like you noted earlier, it's like, is there a kitchen? Is there not a kitchen? You know, a comedy venue is essentially a restaurant with just, all that sort of stuff. So walk me through that process. What is that even like to even venture into?
Oh, I learned a lot. It's very similar to stand-up, where it's like you start and you think you know what you're doing. And then the more and more you learn, the more you realize you have no idea what you're doing. It, again, requires a certain amount of delusion to even think you could do it in the first place. But delusion that would have stopped you. Had you known about it. So it's, again, healthy delusion. And just kind of March of 2021, I signed March 8th of 2021, I signed a lease in Columbus. March 9th, I get a phone call from this comedy club in New York being like, hey, just so you know, no one opens comedy clubs in Columbus because that's the Funny Bones headquarters, and there's a gentleman's agreement not to touch that city. And I was like, well, I just signed a lease. I just signed a 14-month lease, so I'm going to do something. And then it turned out I couldn't do something because I was determined to put it in the short north, because I was like, that's the only place it would work from a foot traffic perspective. Then I was, and then I was looking for spaces. The Ginger Rabbit Jazz Lounge that used to be whatever it's called on Buttles. I can't remember what it used to be. I looked at that space first and was ready to pull the trigger, and then I met with the Funny Bone guys, and they were like, no, bad decision, too small, won't work, which maybe it could have, maybe it wouldn't have.
So sorry to interrupt, they were like helpful?
So they were
There wasn't this like underlying like thing that everybody else was saying like, hey, don't do it or it's ruining a thing.
It was very strange how they got on board. But I think they were, I kind of tried to frame it as, hey, I'm not going to be a competitor. I think they kind of saw me as this idiot who they could probably take advantage of, and they were right. You know, they totally could have. But they were also really nice, and they were kind of like, they saw it as an opportunity to grow more of a scene in Columbus as well, not using their money. And so they had no problem with it taking place, especially
makes
since
sense.
I wasn't going to steal the headliners that they had. And yeah, so then I started searching. I started working with the Funny Bone as well, they like showed me how to run a club and everything like that. They were really helpful. And so at the same time I was doing all this comedy, I was also working at the Funny Bone as an assistant manager in this weird role. But so that was a whole search, and then it was too expensive to find a place. It was too expensive to install a kitchen, to change the zoning. And so every place I looked at just wasn't the right spot. And then fortuitously it got introduced to Don't Tell, and now Don't Tell at the beginning of 2023, I was like, what if we just did 4 to 5 shows every single weekend, brought in headliners, ran it like a club, just with a non-permanent location. And that's essentially what we've been doing. And it took a while to set up the club, but now it's pretty much in existence, and Don't Tell sells out pretty consistently, and it's a nice staple, I think, of the things to do in Columbus every weekend.
Yeah.
And so I like to think I accomplished what I set out to do with starting a club.
Well, what's cool is it's like it's very much like a full circle moment of, again, back when you were getting started as a comedian, you're going out and doing your own individual pop-up shows of just, let me do a show wherever, and then now you're getting brought into Don't Tell, which is pop-up comedy shows without a set headquarters, but in all these different unique, cool locations, popping up, like you said, selling out pretty much every weekend, multiple shows, all this sort of stuff. Like, so it's fun to hear that essentially you're now doing a professional version of what you were doing at one point in time, just to kind of get your name out there, get a foot in the door. And so at the time of you getting hit up about Don't Tell, was comedy sort of like, was it already, I assume, but I'm going to ask this for the interview's sake, is like, was comedy like the main thing at that point in time?
Yeah, it was definitely, I was still working as trying to perform. Starting in 2022, I was still hitting the road a bunch. I was using those dates with Jason to try and plan some shows around. So if I happened to be in Syracuse or something like that, then I'd plan a trip down to New York or to Boston for a couple days after that. And I wasn't making much money at all, but it was still, I was just kind of chasing it and doing it. I was working at the Funny Bone as well. So yeah, it was all, everything was comedy at the time.
Has it been essentially just like we said earlier, like grind mode or go mode this entire time? Or have you gotten that moment where you were able to kind of set for a second and be like, oh, damn, like, okay, I got out of the corporate world. I'm not having to rely on that anymore. Like, cool, my world is comedy centric at this point, where like everything centers around that. Like, have you gotten to feel like that win? Did it ever settle in? Or do you maybe feel like you're like, I'm actually not totally there yet? Like, I don't know.
I mean, there's still more work to be done, and I still need to keep on grinding to get to a point where I can consistently call this my living for the rest of my life. Or maybe not for the rest of my life, but just for now. Like, I'll probably make enough this year for the first time to like have a decent life. At least for this year. But in order to keep that going for next year and the year after, it requires a lot more work. So it's like, it's like out of the corporate world, but I'm still working. Probably not as hard as the people are on Wall Street, but definitely still grinding. And it's not just I'm out of the corporate world so I can just slack. It's definitely a lot of work still here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
But definitely the hard part, which is driving 8 hours in one night for a show, driving all around the country, which I didn't even need to do, but just to these random parts, that part's over. That whole grind is I'm not doing that again. Right.
Yeah. You probably found more logical and practical places to put that energy that you would have previously used doing that.
And now I'm like, I will spend a little bit more money on a flight than I would to drive to LA, for example.
Yeah. What for you in the last like handful of years, talking about all of that stuff, right? Of like, all right, you start working with the Funny Bone, you start, working with, Jason doing all these shows, you're getting on better shows, and then also getting introduced and brought into the fold with Don't Tell and all that sort of stuff. Like, was there another one of those? And again, we're constantly leveling up, we're constantly changing, so we're going to have a bunch of these moments. But my question is, in the last handful of years, have you had another one of those kind of like, oh snap moments of, okay, cool, I see how we're operating on a different level now. I'm seeing these new opportunities of, cool, this is now the new evolution of me as a comedian.
Yeah, I had a joke that I just wrote when I think the Queen died. And I just wrote a joke, which I thought might be funny, about, oh no, maybe it was right before the Queen died. Anyway, it was just a joke about how I thought English people sounded stupid. That I'd lived in America so long that I was like, the English accent is dumb. And I tried it out on stage in the middle of my set, and it got like a few chuckles here and there. And then I tried it out with something about the Queen dying, something about how I was like glad, so just some tongue-in-cheek comment about how I was speaking to a British person pretending to be like a diehard American. And it worked, and then I was like, well, actually, I could run with this and like kind of go on this immigrant who loves America thing, because I saw a lot of foreign comedians being like, oh, America's so stupid, it's got all these problems. And I was like, there's probably a market for an immigrant comedian who loves America. And so I tried starting to write like that, and then I kept on doing that. And then actually I was doing this Columbus bit, that you saw, and I'm sure a bunch of people have seen. And then my buddy Cam Patterson, who's a pretty famous comedian now, he was like, I really like the energy that you bring, the same energy you bring to that Columbus bit, you bring to some of your bits on stage. And I was like, oh, that's a good point as well. Maybe I should just do that for all my bits and like just make everything sound like a rally. And make everything sound exciting. And so those two realizations, like bring more energy and make it more pro-America, were definitely the last two big huzzah moments where I was like, this cracks the code. This helps me find my voice quicker and makes me more exciting to an audience.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, I'll be fully transparent and say, like, that's a thing that I was hooked with when that clip started going around everywhere and getting shared by all these people. Is like, it's like, yes, okay, the joke and what you're talking about is one thing, but for me, it was the delivery.
Yeah,
it was that energy where I'm like, oh, okay, like it's a classic case of like, yes, it's a joke and there's a setup and all this sort of stuff, but I think it's a classic case of they believe if you believe.
Yeah,
and in that, like in everything you're talking about of like Columbus is this and that and blah blah blah, it's like, oh, this is incredible delivery, and I immediately was like sold on that. I'm like, okay, because I feel like how often I tend to look at things from like an entertainment standpoint. It's like I'm always like a story and character type of guy. Like I'm always just like, how does this feel? And so seeing something like that, like, and not, it's not about like comparison at all, but just like making the reference to a lot of other like up and coming comedians of any sort. It's like I think there is a difference in telling a joke and like performing a joke.
Yeah.
And again, that was the thing where I was like, oh, how have I never heard of this dude before? And it's not just like, oh, there's the funny dude with the Columbus joke. It was, this dude's energy is the thing that I'm like, that's cool. I see that, cool, it took the form of this joke, but now I want to know everything else that this guy does. I want to see the rest of his jokes. I want to see more sets. And so on that, like, do you feel like that is maybe an undersold or undervalued skill in I mean the comedy world, but probably in entertainment in general, is like the value of what you unlocked with that, like, oh, I'm seeing kind of what my quote unquote character is. It's still you're not faking anything, but it's also the classic term of like, find yourself with the volume turned up to 11.
Yeah, exactly.
And turning on that character a little bit. Like, do you feel like that is kind of a hidden value in a lot of this stuff?
I think so, for sure.
Yeah,
it definitely, figuring that, I think, in comedy or any kind of performance, you have to kind of go to the extremes in some ways. Maybe you're going to the extremes of the middle even by being the most down the middle character, or if you're going to take one side, you're going to pick no one's really that interested in hearing this, but this, but this, but this, but also this and this. It's just like, if you're going to pick a side, just pick a side. And I was like, yeah, it fits the vibe of you could say I'm parodying, or you could say I'm being serious. I like that in between where you're not quite sure which way I lean.
Yeah.
But that energy I'm bringing is either legit or it's fake, but that's the character I am, which is the pro America, pro Columbus, pro wherever he's living, kind of guy.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's like a part of all of this, like, again, this is all outside, like just assuming and all this sort of stuff, but like, is there a part of this where you feel like you've almost like become like Columbus's comedian right now? Like, because I know they just did the whole like top comedians in Columbus, like you topped that list, like all that sort of stuff, like obviously rad accomplishments, 100%. Is there any part of you that's like, ooh, all right, are we linking a little too closely here, or are you like, yeah, let's go? Like,
I'll claim it for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if the only things that I could write were Columbus jokes, then I'd probably feel a bit more like I wouldn't claim that title. But all my joke, I'm just in Chicago, just in Austin, just in Houston. I'm not telling Columbus jokes there. I'm very happy for I think everyone should have one city that like loves them and that they love, and it's just like a really nice relationship.
Yep.
And then everywhere else they can just be a person. But it is nice to be like the comedian, which everyone always like, you're the comedian. I don't get how that like got the moniker of the comedian.
Right.
But it's just like, that's what everyone always stops me in the street, and it's like, you're the comedian.
Yeah.
And I like it, to be honest. I have no problem with having that tie. I think it's very funny as well, like, people have to explain like the British guy who lives in Columbus.
I know that's literally why I asked that question of like, how, having that tie, how does that feel? Yeah.
I think it's great. I have no problem with it whatsoever, and I hope it continues.
Yeah. No, and of course, again, to your point, you're like, my set is not about Columbus. So, but it's like, if I have that root, if I have that solid foundation of, cool, this is the city that is super behind me, and this is where cool, that's the major support system, dope, and now where else can I expand this?
Yeah, it's just like rappers have all that. Rappers always claim their cities, right?
Yeah.
Jack Harlow's like, I'm from Louisville. That's the one rapper I can think of that's so embarrassing. But Jay-Z's like, I'm from New York. Everyone like, you gotta claim a city.
Yep.
And so Columbus is my city.
Yeah. Now, you did mention this earlier, and I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, although you probably get asked this question all the time. Where's the whole High Noons thing come from?
Oh, one time I was doing an apartment show, and I was doing an apartment show in my apartment in Columbus, and this comedian Mike Rowland I think he was the headliner. I just texted him if he wanted to come and perform for however many $100, and he was like, yeah, sure. And so he came, and the whole thing was, hey, come pay $30. It's a comedy show and free unlimited High Noons. And so I just changed my Instagram handle to try and to draw more attention to the event. And then after that, I just kept it.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's pretty distinguishable, gives a good vibe, lets people know what I'll be drinking after the show if they want to buy me a drink.
Perfect.
And also maybe High Noon would sponsor me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have anything came from that yet? Of any
Shameful, they haven't.
Conversations?
They've been missing a trick.
Wow. Yeah, you're literally just sitting here free promotion every single time you post.
I know.
I've
been trying to branch out to other beverage companies, being like, I'll change my username to Simon.
That's actually incredible.
To Simon Loves Twisted Tea.
I absolutely love that.
Which I think would be very profitable.
That's so, yeah. No, that is also just a genius partnership. It's like, hey, you get my whole ad handle.
Simon Loves Pure Life.
Boom. Done. We're locking it in after this episode. Incredible. Well, how does it feel like at this point to, have a quote unquote city behind you in a way, and to also be kind of past that, like, quote unquote, like, blind positive delusion of, I can do it. Where now I would venture to guess that most people are saying, dude, you're doing it.
Yeah.
This is dope. You broke through that quote, the personal like glass ceiling a little bit of like, oh, okay, cool. Things are working. And like you said, the journey's never over. There's plenty of things that I'm sure right now you're sitting and you're like, dude, I haven't even accomplished this thing yet. Like, we're not there, like 100%. But I guess how does that feel now to kind of like have a little bit of that solidification of, cool, all those random car rides and all that stuff that people kind of probably looked at me like, why the hell are you doing that? Like, it paid off.
Mm-hmm. It's weird. It's weird. It's almost deflating because the whole reason, like I said, the whole reason I did it was to prove to myself and to others that I could do it. Mm-hmm. And it's strange to get to the point where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I proved that I could do it. And now I'm like, well, what? Now I'm like, well, why am I doing it if I've already proven? And I'm trying to figure that out right now.
Okay.
And I'm sure the answer will be you do it because you love it or something boring like that. But realistically, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to find that motivation that I had starting out that I don't know, that I no longer have. Now it's a big thing now is just like I can make a living off of it. So that's a pretty good reason to keep going with it. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I'm trying to find something a bit more meaningful about it. But it's crazy to like set out and achieve something. It's like there was some Atlantic article about gold medalists at the Olympics where after they win the gold medal, they just plunge into depression because they're like, well, I achieved what I set out to do. What do I make of my life now? And I'm not like that. I have not won a gold medal, and I have not been to the Olympics or done anything as significant, but it feels a similar way where I'm like, oh, once you achieve something, where do you go from there?
Yep, 1,000,000%. And that's like a similar thing I feel like I have learned is like that cliche saying of like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, enjoy the process, all that sort of stuff. Like when you're in the middle of the process, you're like, dude, I don't enjoy this at all. I just want the result. Like, this is stupid. Like, get me there. But exactly the stories that you just told, it is the thing of like, cool, I got the gold medal, but everything I was working for was this thing, but now I'm in the moment. So now where do I go? What do I do next? And I think that is the thing of like, yeah, the real value is actually getting there. Mm-hmm. And it's not, of course, does not mean that the result doesn't matter at all. It is a huge victory, an amazing win, no matter what level it is. But there is a lot of truth to that process of, when we're kind of blindly on the grind, going through, putting the work in, just hoping to get those successes. Once you get them, you then have to kind of reprocess exactly what you were saying of like, why am I actually doing this? And then now what do I want to do next? Because the goal was here. We reached it. I'm through that journey. I'm through that process. But now we have to figure out kind of what the next one is. And it's also a classic case of, I've talked to a lot of people who, and I will also do this. I'm trying to get better at it, but kind of a continuous cycle of moving your goalpost. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's always good to have new goals, 100%. But you got to be able to identify when you have reached that one goal before you just blindly go to like, well, no, that one's not good enough. We're moving the goalpost again. But that one's not good enough. That wasn't what I wanted either. And now we're moving the goalpost again. And it's like you have to be able to sit and identify, one, enjoying the process is valuable, and it is a cliche quote for a reason, at least I believe. Mm-hmm. And then also it's learning that like, there is a difference in setting our next wave of goals while appreciating the win that we got hitting that first one, rather than just saying, well, I made it, but it's not this.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, we're literally always going to be chasing something. And yes, there is value in chasing after goals and doing all this sort of stuff, but that has to be balanced out with being present in the moment of, all right, I achieved the thing. Let's figure out how we soak this in a little bit while simultaneously aiming for the next thing, but not, throwing it completely off balance where you're like, no, this thing that I've been working the last 10 years of my life for doesn't matter now because now I can identify a cooler thing I want over here.
That's such a positive way of looking at it. Yeah, definitely. You got to celebrate. Yeah, you have to celebrate your wins.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. I think sometimes you're like, oh no, I shouldn't be celebrating. I got to get on to the next thing. But You're right. Every soccer player, every football player celebrates a touchdown, and it's like you don't know when your next one's coming. You just got to enjoy this one.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there can be that valuable balance of you can 100% set a next larger goal that we want to have that of course we want to work towards, and we should, because we've kind of been saying it this whole episode, like we're always going to be changing, evolving, and growing. Mm-hmm. We should. So there's always going to be that next goalpost, but you still got to take in the fact that, hey, we scored that touchdown right now. That's a big deal. Yes, we have another game in a week. However, let's make sure that we appreciate the fact that we made it through this one in the first place. Because, again, it's like, I, again, personally have felt that, and I've talked to plenty of people where you do just kind of negatively have the blinders on at some point, mm-hmm. where you're not feeling your wins. You're not identifying the growth because we're always worried about what's next. And again, it's been in every, overly positive Instagram page in the world, but it's like, you got to remember sometimes that things you have right now, 5 years ago, would have been like, if I could just get there. So sometimes it's totally good to sit and identify like, oh yeah, this might not be my top thing I want anymore, but it was at one point in time a thing that I really, really wanted, and I've got it. That's worth celebrating. Cool. What's next now? Like, rather than just sitting and saying, oh, well, it's still not good enough. It's still not good enough. It's still not good enough. Because then effectively, whatever the thing is you're doing, whether it's making a podcast, doing something creative, making art, doing comedy, whatever, if you can't, again, I'm just packing in the cliches here, but if you don't do the classic, like, stop and smell the roses every once in a while, I do feel like at some point, like, that's also what turns into burnout. Mm-hmm. That's what comes into the thing of like, oh, I just keep grinding and it's just nothing changes. And it's like, no, actually a lot of stuff has changed, and a lot of you have grown in a lot of these ways, but if you're not identifying it and you're just in whatever's next is what's best, rather than right now it's pretty solid. And when this was what was next at one point in time, and now it's here, let's appreciate that. Because then if you don't, and you're just go all the time, it can easily turn into, I don't want to do this anymore because I'm never feeling a win. Mm-hmm. Because even when I get them, that one's not good enough. I need the next one. And I feel like especially in the entertainment world or the creative world in general, like that is a very slippery slope to easily be able to fall into. At least I've experienced.
I think that's so true. That's completely changed my viewpoint.
Incredible. You know what? Hey, if you walk away with something from this podcast, I'm glad it's that.
No, that's so great.
Well, in lieu of all of that stuff, like, I'm not asking you to reveal big secret goals here, but like, if you are looking ahead, like what are some of those things that you're like, what are the next levels that we're wanting to achieve?
Next level's like far out. I'd love to play the shoe. That would be like a career highlight. Like that could be 20 years from now. I'd love to play the shoe. I'd love to get nominated for an Emmy or a Grammy for stand-up. And those are kind of two big goals, one of which is artistic and one of which is commercial. And I kind of think if I can get to those two somehow, within those two goals, this is all career-wise, mm-hmm. I'll probably have achieved everything I wanted to achieve from like a commercial success point, and then from a artistic point as well, which is just as important.
Yeah,
if not more.
Right. Yeah. So real quick, I want us. We're gonna play pretend. I want you to pretend that time travel's real. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you could go back to any point in time in your life, and share something with younger Simon.
Ooh.
Okay. What point in time of your life are you going to, and what are you telling him?
I think I'd go back. I'd be like 4 years old, and I'd tell him like, hey man, just talk to girls. Go talk to girls. Be like, have a girlfriend when you're 4 years old, and don't worry about it, and just do it. And then be like 7 and have a girlfriend, and don't be weird about it. Cause I'm very happy with everything. In terms of everything has led every decision has led to like being here, and I'm very happy with everything about that. The only I just wish that's my one. I just wish, and now everything's fine as well, on the romantic front as well.
Right.
But I just wish earlier on I had been more open-minded, and more normal. It's the only thing.
Yeah, was it some of that like really staying in your shell that you mentioned kind of like way earlier?
Yeah, it was just staying in my shell, not really being open to experiences, which now I am, but I just wish I had those experiences earlier.
Yeah.
It would have just been nice. It would have been nicer. I also wish I had applied for. I wish I had applied for law school straight out of college when my mind was still fresh, and just been able to defer that, because that's something I'm always like, I'm working on stand-up, but I'm like, I do have some free time. I do have a decent amount of free time, and I'd love to put it to some use of an intellectual persuasion.
Yeah.
And so law school, I think, would have been a fun way to do that. Now it might be it's probably not too late, but I don't have as much motivation or intelligence as I did 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. What like maybe this will be a little bit of a difficult question, because you did say nearly the exact opposite of this earlier.
Sure.
But I still want to throw it out there because I am curious to see maybe how you'd articulate it. You mentioned, we're talking about, all the, the grinding and losing sight of maybe the goal sometimes and all this sort of stuff that we can all fall into. And you had mentioned you're kind of in a place where you're like, I feel like I do want to kind of uncover maybe that why now that we're achieving goals. Now it's stripping back to like what's at the core behind all the fluff we put around it. I know I'm putting you on the spot. If you don't have an answer, doesn't matter. If I asked you right now to maybe take a guess and articulate what you feel like maybe you'd uncover your why as, what do you feel like maybe it is? What would you say?
Number one, I think if I had to uncover, I think it was, I don't know what my why is, and I think the reason why is I had my why, which is I wanted to prove myself to myself and to others, and then I kind of matured out of that. Number one, through proving it, and number two, by realizing I don't need to prove to others or to myself that I'm worthy or anything like that. So I kind of stumbled. So the old why is gone. The new why, I think, is about, I think part of it is the boring answer of it's a job and it pays, and you need to have a job that pays, and it's also a really fun job. So, and how could you say no to a fun job that's so much better than any other job? I think also it's just about hopefully creating art that I like to think of stand-up as art. Not all stand-up, but you see so much and you're like, this is an art. But I like to think of, if there is a why, it's going to be to create meaningful work that has resonance, that's funny, that goes down in the canon as being notable. That's probably the why right now, is moving on beyond like a personal reason and more towards a artistic and ecumenical reason.
Mm-hmm. Is there any, like, if you were pinpointing maybe your favorite part of doing stand-up in general, what do you feel like that's been uncovered to be?
Oh, it's just writing. It's writing a new joke.
Yeah.
It's that first pop when you've got an idea for a joke and you're not sure if it's going to work, and you test it out and it does. And like, or the premise works really well, but the jokes don't work. And so you're like, okay, I'm onto something. I just need to work on it. And then it really is just carving something out of, it's like carving marble, where you just have to chop away and see, does this work? No. Okay, get rid of this, and finally get to this fine-tuned product where you had a slab of marble, a slab of marble, and now it's turned into this beautiful statue. I'm stealing this completely from my college English professor, but trying to do that is definitely the most exciting part. Just editing and getting to a point where you're like, this is perfect. And I've done it with a few jokes, and it feels good, especially to get validation on those jokes and to see them go viral and be like, oh, that's perfect. And it's just the challenge of doing that some more and trying to take it, instead of doing 10 minutes of perfect stand-up, trying to do an hour of perfect stand-up.
Are there any, if anything comes to mind, if I asked you, are there any misconceptions you feel like people have about doing stand-up comedy?
I think everyone who doesn't know about stand-up thinks it's a reflection of how funny they are in person. People are like, oh, what happens if people don't laugh? And I'm like, so yeah, it's most likely people aren't going to laugh. It's an art. It's a craft. Just like anything else. The first time you do anything, the first time you, I don't know, play tennis, you're most likely not going to be Rafael Nadal. But much like the first time Rafael Nadal played tennis, he wasn't Rafael Nadal. But with training and practice and hard work, he got there. And so I think part of it's like a natural ability to be funny, but beyond that, it's just hard. It's just hard work. There's nothing intrinsic. There are some comedians who are born hilarious and are just destined to be hilarious, but for the most part, all of them are funny people who've worked really hard to be good on stage. But being funny on stage is a completely different thing from being funny on a podcast, being funny with your friends, being funny on tweets. That's the big misconception.
I'm kind of going off of that a little bit. I'm sure you've been getting asked this the further you get into the comedy world, all this sort of stuff, but I'm still going to throw you the question. What's your go-to advice? If anybody's listening to this right now, or anybody ever asks you like, hey dude, how do I get started? What do I need to do to start doing stand-up, to be a comedian, any of this sort of stuff? What do you go to?
I follow Bill Burr. Bill Burr gave good advice, which was just get up on stage 10 to 20 times. Don't worry about the material. Obviously work on it and try and make it funny. But if it does work or it doesn't work, again, it doesn't matter because you're starting out and you're not going to be good. What really is important is just being on stage and seeing whether you like being on stage or not. And if you do, then you should keep on doing it. And if you're like, that wasn't for me, then you can chalk it off and say, hey, I'm not interested. But that's the first step. And then from there, the next step, once you've decided, hey, I do like doing this, is to write out your jokes and highlight in green where you think the punchlines are going to be, highlight in orange where you think the setups are going to be, and just make sure that there's no more than 1 or 2 lines of non-highlighted space. Because the worst part of people starting out is they just have a few jokes, but they ramble because they don't realize that they got to keep it tight. And highlighting is a really simple and effective way of keeping track of that.
Yeah, that's good. So in general, anything major you feel like we missed? Any big parts of the story that we didn't dig into? You're like, dude, I have this crazy story about this one thing that I cannot leave out.
I have a bunch. No, I feel this was a really great chat. I feel I learned a lot as well.
Heck yeah, man.
Just from listening to you.
Yeah. Well, dude, I have one final question for you, and then we're going to close it down, and we will officially have made a podcast.
Oh, my God.
So, final question. I ask the same question at the end of every one of these episodes. So now it's your turn. So right now, I would love for you to pretend that everybody everywhere around the world can hear you talk. So you got a live mic. It's connected to everybody. We're throwing logic out the window. They can hear you. Yeah. They can understand you. You get to share one thing with everybody.
Oh, my God.
What are you telling them? What do you want them to hear?
My mind, I just want everyone to hear my Bob Dylan impression.
We could do it.
I've been working so hard on it. But I think it's really good. But it's... But then I have to think about a serious answer. But
it could be Bob Dylan asking Twisted Tea to sponsor you.
Oh yeah, with hey, give it a Twisted Tea. Hey, believe, give us a Twisted Tea. That's my
done.
If I could have everyone hear that impression, I'd be so happy.
Someone from Twisted Tea would be hearing it.
Yeah,
and they'd be like, hey, you know what? Let's get this guy on the.
Jesus Christ, Bob Dylan just vouch for Simon Fraser. That's amazing.
Like incredible.
That I would say I wish everyone was smart. I wish everyone was smarter about why politicians did things. I wish just everyone would realize politicians don't do things because they're moral. They do things because they're strategic and designed to win over the voters themselves. And it works both ways. And I wish people would realize that, because then we could actually have substantive debate about issues rather than having the discussions we do right now, which it's so silly. But yeah, that's what I'd probably want everyone. I'd want everyone to think about why things happen.
Dude, I love it, man. Simon, this was a blast, dude.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
I am glad that we got to not only meet and make this happen, but I'm glad, again, we got to make the time to sit and just actually chat, get to know each other, uncover everything. Before we officially say goodbye, anywhere you want anyone to go find you and what you do?
I am on tour right now. I'm playing across the country in most major cities and certain small cities. So check out my Instagram or website for the dates. And I'll be headlining the Columbus Funny Bone August 15th as part of the Columbus Comedy Festival. So tickets are on sale now. Grab your tickets before they sell out.
Beautiful. Simon, we just made a podcast, my friend.
Amazing.
Dude, thank you so much, man.
What a treat.
We did it.